Thanks, Mamta. First of all, a big thank you to all the panel members. We have had the privilege of having Stephen from the US and Laurie all the way from Australia. So we have different time zones here. And of course, our fellow Indians. Thank you, all of you, to be here. It is a very, very important topic and very close to my heart. Here, I'm not wearing a hat as a lawyer at all today. I'm wearing a hat of a parent. And this particular topic, as a lawyer, in fact, I have had a chance to discuss with different stakeholders, whether it is media companies, schools, social media companies, parents, the children, the NGOs, and not only that, but also with the regulators. And I'm really privileged to have Mr. Maheshwari here with us. Before I, formally start the session, a couple of thoughts here. In India, we have about, if I'm not wrong, about 40 to 42% of the population being below 18. And what is this golden number 18, right? Typically, it has been, traditionally recognized that people below the 18 years of age should be treated as vulnerable population. Even if you see contract, right to, have contract, you cannot do you cannot consummate contract below when you're below age of 18. You cannot have a driving license below the age of 18. There are so many things, there are so many restrictions that are as a legal tool implemented on what you can do at what age. Even for marriage we do have restrictions on at what age one can marry, right? So why is that? Because I think there is an understanding in the society that there are certain sections of the society that need to be taken special care about, for which you could have special tools, whether it is legal tools or other, societal tools that we need to implement. And that is what we are going to discuss today in the context of digital exposure. As we know, all of us are in the lockdown, and most of us would have examined that all our all our time somehow we are on the screen, one way or the other. Whether it is entertainment, whether it is work, whether it is education, and in that context, we thought it is very, very important to have this conversation, and we will have different stakeholders giving their views. To begin with, I invite Mr. Maheshwari because, as a regulator, and since I've been talking to him, he has interesting experiences on what type of issues are coming up to the government, what type of public interest litigations are being filed in the court, what has been the approach of the government. And in fact, Mr. Maheshwari has been also an advisor to the CBSC classroom book that has been now published for the class 9 to 12 students on digital exposure. So first, I will request Mr. Maheshwari to share his thoughts on what issues that they have encountered and how they have dealt with those issues, and very, very interesting stories I'm sure you have to share with us, Mr. Maheshwari.
Thank you, Vicky, and thank you, Madam Gauriji, for giving me an opportunity to share maybe my personal views as well as some of the views of the government with respect to issues concerning children, children's safety, and contents which is harmful to children and available easily on internet. Say today with 68 crore, more than 68 crore people having internet access, with around 45 crore smartphones, almost a similar number now available. Uh, Access of people on internet is definitely very, very high. In fact, there are 29 lakh app on the Android platform, almost 20 lakh apps on the platform, and particularly in the lockdown scenario, and hopefully, I mean, in the post lockdown as well, where the classes of children will continue to be held online, there is the children are being exposed on internet much more than what it used to be earlier because of easy access of pornographic material, because of easy access of I should say their connectivity to the social media, where a lot of, I should say, good material is there, but sometimes there is obscene material also available, or cyberbullying is also possible. And because of peer pressure, maybe uh, children are being exposed, and unfortunately, because of they not being made aware of the cyber etiquettes, they not being aware, they not being made aware of what is good and bad for them, maybe because of the ignorance of the parents, maybe because of the ignorance of the teachers, or maybe because of such a fast growing internet, that children have become vulnerable as on today. From an IT Act perspective, if I look at, maybe it's very clearly stated that as far as the child sexual abuse material is concerned, I mean, so it is not only about children, it is not only what children view, but what everybody views with respect to children. So child sexual abuse material under section 67B is, even viewing is considered to be illegal. One of the major concerns, which even the parliamentary committee, I mean, which recently met and submitted its report to the parliament on the issues relating to pornography and other obscene material, one of the major concerns expressed was as to how do we prevent children from accessing such obscene material. And so, which is therefore going beyond section 67B or 67 or 67 itself in the context of IT Act. Now, with respect to curtailing of the child sexual abuse material on internet, MIT particularly has been taking, I should say, a number of initiatives have been taken by MIT. We from our side have identified Interpol, which publishes Interpol's worst of list. And this list is made available only to the concerned agencies in our country. It is CBI. So we approach CBI, and we are sharing this list, taking from CBI to the ISPs for blocking in the country. We knew that, I mean, this Interpol list, which is basically talking of worst of list and talks of complete domains to be blocked, probably is not a good enough method to curtail or curb availability of child pornography. So therefore, I mean, way back in April 2017, MIT issued an order that all the ISPs which are controlling gateway traffic in India should follow IWF, Internet Watch Foundation list. Internet Watch Foundation, for that reason, happens to be one of my, in fact, it's the oldest and one of the prominent, I should say, hotline portal dealing with child sexual abuse material. We were on some technical ground dragged into Prajula Suomoto case, which was dealing with gang rape and later on child pornographic material. Once again, it was all about availability of such material on internet. And it was like a group of technical people, including the social media sites, platforms, the lawyers were representing, and Home Ministry, which is a stakeholder agency with respect to the crime, and Ministry of Electronics and IT, which was representing the technical side. We sat together for about 2 months, came up with a list of recommendations, many of which, in fact, all the recommendations were agreed by the Honorable Supreme Court. But I will just like to mention few of them, that for certain keyword searches, if you make certain keyword searches, search engines as well as the content hosting platforms were asked to issue warnings that maybe you are looking for content which is considered illegal. If it is just accidental, maybe you can contact so and so. So all those, that's the first, I should say, result which pops up in all the search engines, in most of the popular search engines, for certain keywords. And our effort is to see this list of keyword is gradually and continuously expanded. Uh, One of the major recommendation was that India doesn't have a hotline where, in fact, anonymously or otherwise, complaints, if any, need to be at least reported. There should be an ease of access of reporting, and that's how National Cybercrime Portal cybercrime.gov.in came into existence, which initially was allowing rape, gang rape, and child sexual abuse material to be reported. But as on today, it does facilitate reporting of any cyber crime which is happening in the country. In both ways, you can report anonymously or otherwise with your identity known. We also asked the search engines as well as the content hosting platforms, the social media platforms, to initiate the trusted flagger program. I mean, so that if there is any content which is harmful for the minors or harmful or illegal otherwise, that this content can be reported as soon as possible. And maybe if there are trusted flaggers available in the country, it will be even more helpful. Of course, awareness is always a key. So awareness is something which is definitely required. And we have been getting a large number of requests, particularly on PUBG and other violent games, that they are in a way destroying the culture of the country. They are in a way making children more and more addicted. So while it is the responsibility of the children, the schools, the parents, everybody's responsibility, and a lot of awareness needs to be created. We started engaging with PUBG, particularly, I mean, PUBG, and to see as to how they should be, I mean, we practically, I mean, persuaded them that they should decrease the number of hours after which the warnings should start, the platform should start giving the warnings. And courtesy of our efforts, in fact, I was wondering, I mean, that they were able to play such games for the whole day. At least children are forced to move out after 4 hours, and maybe adults are now being forced to move out after 6 hours. But but we are continuously still working with them so that even this can be reduced. There have been a number of complaints with respect to video on demand platforms, and that is where we started engaging with them, with them also. So while there are issues because they are such peculiar platforms which do not directly fit into the definition of intermediaries, they're also not fitting into, I mean, the definitions of what the Ministry of I&B in the country controls, regulates. So we therefore encourage them to come up with their own self code of regulation so that there is some sort of a semblance in the country. Of course, we also realized that in order to do things effectively, maybe NICMIC is an interesting partner which can help us to know if there is any child sexual abuse material being uploaded from the country. And that is where Ministry of Home Affairs, once again, I mean, while they were, I mean, interacting with us for last couple of years, last year we signed an MOU with NICMIC, and we have directly started, I mean, getting in an almost real-time manner the contents which are being considered to be child pornographic and are being uploaded from the country. And based on those inputs, a number of FIRs have been filed. Of course, capacity in police also remains a concern, but but at least a very good beginning has been made. We were also engaging with WhatsApp, seeing the potential of, in fact, the new intermediary guidelines. We are trying to put in, I mean, more and more accountability to such messaging and other social media platforms. But courtesy our forceful engagement with WhatsApp, that the number of forwards, particularly for those messages which were going viral, was initially reduced to 5 in India, and has very recently during the corona lockdown period has been reduced to 1. So we also in fact asked WhatsApp that if there is any abnormal behavior on any particular phone number, because many of them are being used through bots, that such accounts should be removed. We encouraged, for example, TikTok came up with a one pager ads, the wait a sec. So wait a sec was in a way our effort to see that uh, mm, I mean, people post on such popular and maybe such funny, I should say, platforms, that they should wait. They should, I mean, wait review, and that is when they should be posting. Of course, there are dedicated institutions like NCPCR which have been working. And before I close, I will also like to mention that we have been working closely with CBSE. Ministry also has got an information security education and awareness program, wherein through classrooms, wherein through radio, wherein through websites, we are coming up. We regularly conduct programs for children, for students. I'm differentiating between children and students, for parents, for teachers, for police people, for judiciary. So almost all spectrum of people, for women, and almost and then for specifically for PUBG, specifically for WhatsApp, specifically for other social media sites. So what can be the do's and don'ts, so that comprehensively we try to cover. We recommended syllabus for CBSE. We actively worked with them to so that they came up with certain guidelines in 2017. Few books have also been published by them. So all that is going on in an effort to see that access of pornographic material to children, access of violent material to children, and access of child pornographic material to everybody is curbed in India. So that's when I stop. Back to you, madam.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. Maheshwari. That was very, very insightful. And the reason I say so, because all the time, sometimes when there is any societal issue, oftentimes the question is asked, what is the government doing? What are the courts, are the courts taking cognizance of these issues or not? And you have nicely narrated that it is not only the legal framework within which we can always solve the problem, but it can be a collaborative discussion between the regulators and the other stakeholders in the society to deal with the positives and negatives of the digital world. And I'll definitely come back to you, Mr. Maheshwari, on a couple of other questions. But I
Sure.
now request Stephen, because he has been working, and their organization, in fact, has taken a lot of initiative in terms of safety of the children and the families on the internet. I've had the pleasure of reading some of his blogs, very nicely and very simply written material. So Stephen, without much ado, I think I would request you to give your perspective and what steps your organization has taken in the context of the digital world.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you so much for involving me in this webinar. Uh, I'm a big fan of the work that's being done by a range of actors in India. And in fact, I was there just in 2018, and in fact was planning a trip this year. Unfortunately, the coronavirus stepped in, but I do hope to be back again soon. So yes, my name is Stephen Balcom. I'm the founder and CEO of the Family Online Safety Institute, which I created in 2007. Our mission is to make the online world safer for kids and their families. We're based in Washington, D.C., and we're also a registered charity in the UK. We have over 24 members of some of the leading companies in the internet space, including Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Netflix, and many others. I personally have worked in this space since the mid 90s on both sides of the Atlantic, as well as across Asia. Um, we talk about the three P's of policy, practices, and parenting. What I mean by that is enlightened public policy, uh, laws, regulations that are informed by scientific research into what is the actual harm going on, industry best practices. So the self-regulatory efforts that the technology companies can create, from parental controls, privacy settings, and so on, and a project called Good Digital Parenting, which I'd like to talk about in a moment in more detail. Before I begin, I just ought to say that there is no silver bullet. There's no one clear solution to dealing with this issue. We talk about creating a culture of responsibility where government, industry, law enforcement, but also parents, teachers, and the kids themselves have different but overlapping areas of responsibility for safety. And we define online safety as acknowledging the risks, mitigating the harms, while also ensuring that our kids can reap the rewards of our digital lives. And we try to always point towards the positive here. And by the way, you don't get rewards if you don't take risks. Now, you take calculated risk, you take risks with safety measures. I mean, the way to be risk-free is to disconnect from everything and to throw out all of your screens, which is probably not a good idea, given that our whole society and our culture, our economy, and so on is increasingly going online. And the way we also sum it up is 3 words: tools, rules, and schools. So the technologies tools that are available from parental controls from the wireless providers, but also streaming services like Netflix. The rules being both the legislation, but also the rules that parents set in their own homes, and schools. And schools covers the broad range of education. And I want to include parents in the educational effort as well. Now, we're living through the most extraordinary time right now. We're all impacted around the world by the spread of COVID-19 and the very long lockdown. And it's been, as I've been reading, particularly severe in India because the children have not even been allowed out, which of course has led to, in India, as well as in the US and across Europe, a big increase in the amount of time that kids are online. Kids, of course, are being homeschooled online, as well as playing games and watching videos. And for the most part, it is their only way to connect with their friends. But I do want to make a distinction between screen time and screen use. There's a world of difference of a child spending a half an hour talking to their grandparents on their phone to just simply hour after hour consuming videos. So let's make that distinction and let's be aware of how important screens are in our children's lives. Now, in terms of how we deal with our children, this is where we had developed something called the 7 Steps to Good Digital Parenting, to give parents an easy to follow and easy to use set of instructions about how best to keep their kids safe online. And number 1, and the most important, is to talk with your kids. Talk with your kids early, in other words, when they're quite young, as the technology tools and the tablets and the phones are being put in the hands of younger and younger children. You have to talk often, but you must stay calm. Don't overreact if they bring you something that they've seen that has upset them or disturbed them. And while talking with your kids, set up rules with them and agree the consequences if they step over the line. Number 2, educate yourself. If you don't know about TikTok, as the minister was just mentioning, if you don't know about WhatsApp, search for it, or even ask your kids, can you explain to me the game that you're playing? And kids love to talk about their online apps and games and so on. So get involved with their online lives. Use parental controls. As I mentioned before, Netflix has some very robust age-appropriate tools, but many, many other tools are out there for you to use. And many of them are in the operating system, in the search engines. If you don't know, then search for it. And I'm going to skip, because I have a short period of time here, to the last one, number 7, be a good digital role model yourself. I mean, these are very difficult and challenging times, but we need to show our kids that we are able to control our own online use, and we are able to be polite and civil when we are commenting on social media. But make sure to put your own phone down. We get complaints from children now that they can't get their parents' attention because they're always online. And kids will do what we do and not what we tell them to do. So let's help them to build resiliency and strength of character during these challenging times. And let's combine the tools, the rules, and educational efforts to keep them safe online. So thank you very much for giving me some time, and I look forward to the discussion shortly.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. That was very well articulated and very, very simple steps. And I request everybody to read his recent blog on the FOSSI website in terms of how do we handle the situation in the current lockdown. Over to you, Laurie. I know you have some interesting things to share, including the data that you have collected in terms of especially the exposure to the pirated websites and the harm that it is likely to cause, and how this sort of information should be made available in terms of awareness, which both Mr. Maheshwari and Stephen mentioned just now. So may I request you to please share your presentation with us?
Thank you so much, Gary, and thank you for having me on the panel as well. I'm going to take you very quickly through some slides which demonstrate some of what we do. Creative Content Australia is an organisation that tries to raise awareness about the value of copyright and the impact of content theft. But my focus today is really to show you the impact or the relationship between online pirate sites and malware, and the how these sites are often the gateway to pornography, online gambling, and a lot of dark web activities. Could you change the slide? I'm not sure if I don't have the, oh, I do. No, I don't. I don't have control over it. Well,
Shivanand, do you have the control? Can you shift the slide, please?
Yeah.
thank you. So the piracy ecosystem is, of course, built on making money from stolen screen content, and usually often uninformed by these risks. Users of the sites are baited into trying something they think is free or cheap, but comes with a hidden cost. And that cost can be fraud or viruses or loss of personal data and exposure to potentially unwanted programs and very unsavory online activities such as gambling and pornography. Could you change the slide? Creative Content Australia has done peer-reviewed research for over 10 years. We use an independent researcher with a statistically relevant group of subjects on an anonymous online omnibus. And our research, people tell us, or our research shows that persistent pirates, people who pirate often, are significantly more likely to experience an issue, a virus, a malware, or some form of malware if they pirate than those who pirate less frequently. So amongst 12 to 17-year-olds, you can see that those that pirated more often, 75% of persistent teen pirates experienced one of those problems, compared to 39% of what we call casual pirates who only pirate maybe once a month or even less. If we could switch slides. So apologies for the very graphic nature of these slides, but children themselves are recognizing that accessing pirated content raises the risks of viruses. And this is a screenshot of a search for the kids movie Lego Movie on a very well-known and well-used globally pirate site called Putlocker. And as you can see, while the links to the films come up, so does some fairly unsavory sexual advertisements. If we could move on to the next slide. So there's been considerable amount of research besides our own, some studies, some peer-reviewed research, and I've just pointed out two of the most recent, one by Carnegie Mellon University in 2018, who studied the real use behavior of over 250 users for over a year and showed how infringing sites were far more likely to lead to malware on user machines, and that doubling the infringing site use led to a 20% increase in malware found. And they also found, interestingly, that people who infringe are not any more web savvy or careful when they visit these infringing sites, and are not more likely to install an antivirus than anyone else. So they tend to be risk takers, and parents are often very unaware of where their children are finding video and film content online, and unaware of the exposure that their children can have to these issues. If we could move to the next slide. This is a study commissioned by the Intellectual Property Crime Threat Assessment by the European Union Intellectual Property Office last year. And they showed that phishing techniques and the dissemination of malware was prominent on pirate websites where they targeted consumers, and that 1 in 4 people who stream illegally through a box or stick are affected by a virus or malware. And people are tricked into sharing sensitive personal information, payment card details, etc., through these potentially unwanted programs that are delivered to their computers when they click on a movie link. But interestingly, what this study also showed that there are very sophisticated criminal groups behind piracy activities, and they're often linked in many cases to other criminal activities, including, in a number of cases, terrorism. If we can move to the next slide. So there are 2 ways in which Creative Content Australia tries to mitigate the effects of piracy. One is through creating consumer campaigns. And in our most recent campaign, we tried to highlight the potential consequences of accessing movies and TV shows from pirate sites, and in a very dramatic way to demonstrate that the risks associated with those sites are not worth it. So I'd like to play you the 30-second campaign that we made and that we screened earlier this year. If we could play.
Yes.
So you were hacked and they stole your passwords and private photos. Use one of those pirate sites, did we? And you know that's illegal.
Yeah, but I'm the victim here.
The victim of your own crime.
All that for a free movie?
Sorry, son, can't help you.
Because it wasn't free, was it? Cost him heaps.
Thank you. If we could move on to the next, to slide 9. Back on the presentation. So as you can see, quite a strong message to both parents who often don't realize, and to teenagers who are unaware that there are some, there's some very strong negative effects of looking for content on pirate sites. And of course, what this tries to demonstrate is that because these pirate sites operate outside of Australian borders, and in many cases outside of any jurisdictions' borders, law enforcement in our own countries can do very little to influence the content on those sites and to apprehend the people behind them. If we can move to the next slide. And CCA also develops education resources and distributes them for free to schools throughout Australia. We have an education portal called Nothing Beats the Real Things. And these resources try and stimulate classroom discussion about copyright. And to the next slide, what we also try and do through these is to promote academic integrity, good digital citizenship, which we see as behaving online in the same way as you would in the real world, where you wouldn't think about stealing anything, whereas stealing content is the online equivalent. And of course, a respect for copyright and an awareness of the impact that piracy has. So thank you very much. Hope this has just been a small insight into the relationship between cyber safety and pirate site.
Thanks a lot, Laurie. In fact, Mr. Maheshwari is quite keen to get your presentation because he's found that very useful. I'm sure we
Of
can share it with him.
of
Uh,
course.
so I think what we have now seen is a regulator perspective. What we have seen is how internationally, it's not only that, whatever we are discussing today, it's an international issue or international aspects, aspects which are dealt internationally. I don't want to necessarily say as an issue, but aspects which have to be, handled, and all the communities are equally in the game. And I can see that there are efforts being taken in different jurisdictions, and it would be very, very interesting for for us in India to also understand what efforts are already being taken internationally and how quickly can we try to use them with appropriate customization in the Indian context. Now, before I get into the specifics of the issues, quote unquote, I want to first go to Dr. Deshpande and discuss one interesting aspect that some of you have mentioned earlier is on the e-learning, because today in the lockdown situation there is a lot of discussion around e-learning, how it is going to be beneficial, etc. But even in that context, Dr. Deshpande shared a very interesting perspective, which I would request him to share, before we discuss other aspects of the digital world.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Gauri, for inviting me over. And thanks, excellent presentations by both all the three speakers till now. Um, well, I just happened to read a document on National Computer Survey, which was published by the Federal Department of Education and Health, United States of America. And in that, they have tried to find out what are the learning outcomes of digital learning effort. And they have tried to rate the learning outcomes on a scale of 500 points. And they found that students who have classroom learning as well as digital learning, the average scores of their learning outcomes are 282 out of 500. And if they don't have the digital learning and they just have classroom learning, then their scores drop down to around 260. But the surprising thing is that if you don't have the classroom learning and if you have only the digital learning, the scores drop down to 100. Okay. So, what is the value addition that digital learning does? That's my first question. So, whether e-learning is actually just e-teaching. Okay, so that's one thing that I'm not sure about. The second thing that we all mental health professionals, and I'm sure that even the people who are in the information technology would agree that the learning outcomes depend on the size of the size of the screen that is giving the teaching experience. And Mr. Maheshwari in his presentation mentioned that about 45 crores of smartphone users exist in India. In a population of 140 crores, 45 crores have access to the smartphone. And I'm sure that these are not children. Okay. So, and India wouldn't be India if the adults in the family would give their smartphone to their children for education for 6 hours or 8 hours. As the size of the screen goes down, the learning outcomes would certainly be affected, especially in children who have conduct disorders or attention deficit hyperactivity disorders. Forget about the disorders. Okay, even a normal child to focus on a small smart screen with stamp-sized pictures of friends on the screen, it's very difficult to understand how much of a learning it is. We all have gone to schools and we have seen that the teacher's personality or the delivery of the teaching, okay, is extremely important for learning outcomes. And here we have a screen where the teacher cannot have an eye-to-eye contact. And the smaller the size of the screen, that contact would become impossible. Okay? So then how is it going to happen? I gather that the accessibility of a smartphone in India is about 1.3 per family. Okay. So I have my own doubts about the outcomes of this learning experience. But at the same time, I believe that this is something that is better than nothing. Okay. But here again, we probably are trespassing the main tenet of right to education. So the equality of opportunity of education probably means that e-learning would provide educational opportunity to the creme de la creme, and the poor people who are probably in huge majorities in India rather than as compared to your countries. They are going to have a difficult time accessing educational opportunity. So I don't know how we are going to address these issues. So one of my friends, when we were discussing, I just happened to say that probably policymakers make policies that suit themselves and not the end user. So whether we are falling into that trap of running behind, ignoring television as a medium of teaching, rather than going for internet learning just because we are looking at the West. So that's my take on this issue. Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Navneet.
Dr. Deshpande. I think very interesting perspective, especially in the current scheme of things when schools are planning or colleges are planning to use the internet for, e-teaching or e-learning, whichever the suitable word. Uh, on that, note, and with the other thoughts which Stephen mentioned, especially on the parental responsibility, Amod, we have discussed quite a few times and exchanged ideas, and I know that you're passionate about this subject. Do you want to share your views on, basically what is the effective approach that you have seen in terms of parenting? What works, what doesn't work? Any thoughts that you want to share?
Yes, thank you, Gauri. Am I audible?
Yes, Amod, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you to Fiki and in a lovely presentation by my co-panelists so far. So I just wanted to share a perspective that what is the role of parent? The role of a parent in the situation of, where we are discussing digital awareness is really the most critical role at the foundation role. So the parent plays a role of a mentor and a friend to a child. And it begins his first steps from home and goes to his next home. Now let's look at what happens. Yes. Hello?
Go ahead, Amod.
So we have critically, the 5 Ps, I would say, is something which the parents can, bring an awareness for a child to look at from the inception. And the 5 Ps really are these: password, privacy, profile, photographs, and protection. And I'll just go into these in little detail. But effectively, it's very important to understand or make a child understand and be aware of what are passwords. They are like a gateway. They are a key that a child can open, magical doors to. But those passwords can also be very dangerous because they can go into wrong hands. They could be, passwords which can be stolen, and therefore one has to keep those passwords very safely and take a lot of precaution of how to handle those passwords. Privacy. Privacy is really, your private information, and a child needs to be made aware of what and how much he or she should really share online, be it a friend or an online friend. So it could be private information about residential addresses, about personal beliefs, or it could be about their personal choices or maybe favorite games. But it's important to understand that this vital information can get stored somewhere, and it could be used by miscreants who have ulterior motives. The third P is profile. Many children build their own profiles, and the social media being a very popular platform, people do end up, children do end up having their own profiles, and they're very proud to have their profiles. And they like to change their DPs and pictures and keep posting their updates. Now it's very important to understand what photographs and what I would say content posting can do online. It again can go into wrong hands if there is any hack or if there is a miscreant or if the site itself is not a verified site. And those are the dangers of putting up your personal photographs of your family members or yourself, which can go into wrong hands and can lead to criminal activities subsequently. And I would say the fifth P is the protection. Now, protection we talk about in terms of how IP is used. How do you use IP which is supposedly freely available on the internet? So you could just go to, you can go to a site and you think the stuff that is available today freely, I can download and start using it. But really, that's not the case, right? We know that the content which is there, it could be audio, it could be video, it could be maybe written matter, it can be plagiarized. And a child may not understand the difference between copy and paste. And cutting and pasting content can lead to a child getting into trouble because the law will not differentiate. It's a crime at the end of the day, so that becomes very critical for a child to understand. The other part of protection, I would say, is the protection that what child needs to keep in mind about typically the phishing attacks, the malware, and the viruses, or what is called ransomware. And these are all very critical awareness point which parent can bring to a child's attention in a friendly manner and make him aware of how these critical thieves can lead to a more fruitful experience when a child is working and surfing on digital platforms. The other point I would like to bring out is really what is the aim of this entire parenting exercise is really to build a child into what is called a good digital citizen. And that really is something which, like Laurie said a little while ago, begins from demonstration. You have to demonstrate. The last part was really about the aim of this entire exercise is to build what is called a child into a good digital citizen. And that is the aim of this entire parenting exercise, where a child knows his rights and responsibilities and how a child can get into being a good digital citizen in the world that he will face into as he steps out into it. And the other thing which Laurie had mentioned is very critical. A child is going to look up to the parent as a mentor. So it is very important for a parent to demonstrate those values that he or she wants to guide in a child. So demonstration and active participation in a friendly, open manner when you sit down with the child and discuss is extremely critical. So I think these are the very critical ways in which a parent can build the child and get him in or her into understanding how a digital citizen can be participative and contributing in the society.
Thanks, Amod. Very, very interesting. But on this, I would also want to understand, Dr. Deshpande, your quick view in terms of the approach, because because we simply say, okay, parent needs to do this, but what is the approach at that age that will be digested by a child?
That is age appropriated. And I think with all technology, you require hand holding of the child. And I'm sure the parents, as Mr. Gupta has said, that they would have to spend more time. And with mobile phones, again, my issue is that if there is a daily wage earner, the parents are not going to have that kind of time to spend with their child. They can probably, some of them might offer their mobile phone for the child for the sake of education, but they won't be able to miss out on their work. But I feel that beyond parents, I think schools have to have child protection policy in place. And I feel that I don't know. I have been associated with a few schools in Mumbai, and I'm not aware of such policies in place. So we have to certainly do something about child protection policies at school. For instance, whether they would be allowed to use social media for educational purposes. If there are internet emails to be circulated, whether there should be a domain name that should be reserved for a particular school, okay? Because then there is a protection, there is a safety of the child when the child is interacting with the teachers or interacting with other children, whatever it is. So I think that schools need to be proactive. One more point I would like to make here is that yes, the criminal part, the criminalization part of child sexual abuse and bullying has been suggested by Mr. Maheshwari. But what about the counseling part? Because just deterrent policies are not helpful. The child has experienced something which he should not have. He did not have to experience. Okay. So there is an emotional impact of that particular experience. May it be child sexual abuse, or it could be pornography, or it could be bullying. Okay. But the emotional consequences need to be addressed. And for that, we have to have code of conduct ethics for The counselors, if the counselors are not there, the teachers, the schools have to be a bit more proactive about implementing plans if at all such things happen. Okay. There was recently, I heard a suicide committed in Kerala because the child was not able to access internet. So she felt that learning opportunity was being taken away from her and the parents couldn't afford internet and she committed suicide. Now, such issues are preventable. Okay, the schools can give a top up, 500 rupees for 3 months. The schools certainly have that kind of money, society certain. And it's not that all the children are going to have such difficulties. So I think child safety policy, which should address the local issues in each school, needs to be set up, and maybe some guidelines form the decision makers, and the local flexibility to set their policy in place is something that probably is required at the school level.
Thanks, Dr. Deshpande. Here, I would want to go to Stephen. Quick comments on 2 points that Dr. Deshpande mentioned about the e-learning aspect. Whether you have any view on that. And secondly, on the school part, in terms of your efforts as FOSSI, what are the things that you believe, that the schools, your interaction with schools has demonstrated, whether schools are willing to go extra mile and take these efforts in terms of child education?
Well, thank you. I want to stress right away that we don't work directly with schools, but we do work with parent teachers associations and so on, because we have focused on parents as the key group. Now, having said that, I'm obviously very aware of many of the e-learning initiatives that are going on, both here in the US and in Europe. I think we're in the early days. I think that this is something that I guess we thought was going to be a 3 to 5 to 10 year program, and it's had to be rushed in the last 3 to 5 to 10 weeks to make it all happen. And teachers were unprepared, students were unprepared, and particularly parents were overwhelmed with the requirement of them suddenly to have to both work from home and homeschool, or in some cases, if they're essential workers, go out of the home and somehow teach their kids when they come back. So now, having said all of that, I think what's happened is that there's been a tremendous rush of innovation in terms of things like the platform Zoom, for instance, which is very popular in the West, as a way not only to teach kids, but also for kids to help each other out with projects and schoolwork and so on, as well as bringing families together and friends together. So I remain optimistic. I think that, I mean, I really appreciated that view that the smaller the screen, well, the learning outcomes depend on the size of the screen. I thought that was a very, very interesting insight. And that obviously smaller and smaller cell phones are harder and harder places in which to work compared to a laptop, compared to a schoolroom, obviously. And we have to really think about the importance of social interaction when we come out of lockdown and help our children to readjust and get back into relating to each other and relating to teachers and to adults in ways that have been put on hold for the last few months.
Thanks, Steve. Coming to Abhitav now, you have handled several issues on the ground, and you said that you have some views on the gaming or pornography exposure, and you have actually handled uh, in a particular way. So could you just explain in the Indian context, and then I'll go to Laurie to see whether she can sort of relate to what we find in terms of issues in India and give her perspective as well. But first, if you could share the type of issues that you have seen and the scale, because sometimes what happens is there is just a perception that there are a lot of issues, right? So do you believe the scale of issue is that high, and what stage are we, and how have you managed those?
And we work on online safety directly in schools and colleges through a methodology of doing workshops. And actually, two of my mentors, Shri Rakesh Maheshwari ji and Stephen Balkan, are here. So I'm actually speaking in front of them and have followed their work, and they have taught me a lot over the years. And the way we approach technology is with the same optimism and positivity that this is a new tool in the space of parenting and also from the young person's perspective in their lives. And now that you asked about the size and the scale of the problem, well, the good news is that majority of users, young and old, are having a positive experience online. So if we look into the total number of users, majority are having a positive experience. On the other side, we still need to learn a lot. As Stephen rightly said, these are extremely early days. And in India, they are even earlier because majority of our population is still to come on the internet. So we are learning a lot. Young people's approach towards technology is that of interest. And now coming to the core of our discussion, which is parenting. So firstly, we reach out to parents as well as teachers to approach technology as a tool, which it is, not more, not less. It will never ever replace parents or teachers, but parents and teachers can use it in a very beautiful manner to make it a comprehensive learning for the child. When it comes to gaming, specifically, as we discussed, addiction is a word used very loosely, that kids are addicted to gaming at large scale. Interest and addiction, and that's a nuance, and we have Sir Deshpande here who can explain it in more detail, is something that we really need to look into while we are talking about gaming or social media. The fear factor, and something Rakesh Maheshwari ji mentioned, that awareness is the core aspect. We cannot approach digital parenting from the perspective of fear or control. It has to be from a perspective of co-learning, because technology is coming at a very rapid speed, and children probably are picking it up a lot quicker than the parents themselves. But the conversation is what is actually which makes a difference. So if there's a case that comes to us, or if there's a young person who's troubled, the first thing they will either say that please don't tell my parents, or it will be completely reverse, where the parent and the child come to us together. And the difference of handling this is worlds apart. When the child feels alone in any negative situation and they don't trust a teacher, a parent, or any elder in their lives, it is very, very difficult even to use the laws, the counseling, and all the helping mechanisms that are present don't come into play if the child is not willing to work together with an elder. Whereas if the communication between parents and children has been clear, has been positive, and which needs to come at a very young age, did you scold them when they came with a query about pornography, or did you explain it? Now, this is the difference. And what Laurie has highlighted, of course, they will search for their movies, but do they go to Netflix, or do they go to Z, or do they go to a pirated website? Now, all this has to be worked out on family conversations. So, our approach towards solving or helping a young person is firstly realizing their position, their fears, and then also guiding them through, counseling them through step by step about how the law can help them, how the family can help them, and most importantly, how the school can help them. So, just to close my input, our tagline remains: children should use technology and not get used by technology. And this difference will come in something that we call cyber etiquette, which has to be taught by family, by school, and society. The three tools of socialization have to come together, and the stakeholders need to work together. So that is something that we always work towards and we highlight. And in our workshops, it is about positivity. So it is about to be aware rather than beware. So know about your information, know about your technology, and use it for positivity.
So that's very useful, Amitabh. Laurie, do you have any quick reaction to what Amitabh said, and based on your experience?
I absolutely endorse what everyone has said about the role of parenting, and we again have seen it in our research. We know that parents who have that conversation about pirate sites with their kids, those kids are far less likely to pirate than people who've not had that conversation in the home. But I guess in terms of, and obviously I have a very narrow focus here, in terms of piracy. When kids go looking for content, they don't think about copyright. They don't think about, I wonder if that's legal or illegal. They just want to see a film, they look it up. Search engines will generally take them to a pirated version, and they'll open that site without much knowledge. And that's why the role of parents is even more important in this, because they're the ones who need to better understand how these sites are often a gateway to the kind of problems that you are all talking about online.
Thank you. Now I want to throw this question to, all the panel members and, whichever sequence that you want to go. So when we talk about all the initiatives that we have discussed today and, learnings from US, learning from Australia, learning from our local situations, but when we talk about India, we are really not talking about one India. We are four stages, if you really see in terms of development or maybe more. And when we talk about these things, saying that, okay, parents' role, right? The parent has to take the lead. But considering the digital, the penetration of mobile and the penetration of data, which is now has become very cheap in India, across, different strata of the society in terms of the awareness issue. When I say strata, I'm talking more in terms of awareness. So do we believe that, the at different, basically in rural areas, for example, that parents are really equipped, to handle these situations, to have that conversation, and would really love to hear, everybody's perspective as to how do we help that, that level, because the first level itself is the awareness at the parental level. So what are the thoughts in the Indian context that, that all of you have? And maybe Mr. Maheshwari, you want to go first on this?
Yeah, in fact, we do realize that maybe accessibility and the availability of internet maybe in all stratas of societies may not be at par, and that is where from government of India is, we particularly say from 1st June itself, we have initiated 12 education channels, each one for, one particular class is starting from 1st to 12th. So the whole aim is maybe through these classes, subjects like this can also be given, and these channels will be available on DTH as well as on internet. So therefore, maybe will be much more accessible compared to what is available on internet. And as one of our esteemed speaker has also talked about, that maybe the size of the screen also does matter in communicating what you want to. And particularly if these channels and this knowledge becomes available to teachers, to parents, to students through TV, will be much more helpful.
Thank you, sir. Amod, do you want to talk, sort of share some thoughts on this?
I think more like Mr. Maheshwari said, it's a far larger collaboration that we can look at, and how we can leverage it is to actually create campaigns around it, in that sense, and create a lot of awareness across multiple media. So while we have television on the one hand, there is digital platforms, there is also the print, and the power of all of these mediums can be leveraged to create what is called a campaign around the literacy and the awareness for both parents and child. And we can take a cue from some of the campaigns which have been done for issues like literacy. We have done campaigns for polio. We've done it for piracy, and those kind of campaigns can be looked at as a holistic campaign across multiple platforms, and that will give a lot of flip to the entire discussion that we're having today.
Thanks, Amod. In fact, we do have a campaign called Digital India. So within that campaign, probably we can start, and Mr. Maheshwari maybe is, for you to take back to the government, whether we can start some campaign of responsible netizens, right? It is a conscious effort taken at by all the stakeholders, and especially in the context of rural India, it will be very important that when we are giving the tools, how to, with the proper checks and balances to use those tools at it cannot, digital India and responsible netizenship has to go hand in hand. One cannot, just accelerate and other is lagging behind. So in that context, Amitabh, since you work on the ground, what are your thoughts on this particular aspect?
Certainly, ma'am, awareness campaigns are extremely, extremely important, and we need to do a lot of work on it. And like Amod sir just said, across platforms, radio is another platform that I would like to add to it. Another aspect is, ma'am, with these four stages, there are also two very big differences between digital migrants and digital natives. So all of us digital migrants approach technology very differently than many of the young people, and this needs to be appreciated and known by the parents. So when they are reaching out to kids, they cannot start the conversation like my father used to do many times, that I did not see electricity and you know the internet. Internet is a normality for them, and their starting benchmark is a lot higher. Similarly, a lot of positivity needs to be put behind by all stakeholders to the efforts being made by the government. The MyGov platform is beautiful, it is amazing, and it can be improved and amplified with all our help. So the work Rakesh Maheshwari ji and many other government agencies are doing, it needs to be popularized by all of us, from the non-profit sector as well as from stakeholders, OTT platforms, social media platforms, that we need to back it. COVID is a good example right now because everybody is trying to help. When it comes to positive netizen, that is where our role is also, that we push the government's positive campaigns across and through various areas and villages and towns in India.
Thanks, Amitabh. Stephen, if I remember correctly, the seven-step program that you had mentioned, I believe you had also got it translated in Indian languages and was used in India. Maybe that is something the government can also take benefit of.
It has been translated into at least one, if not several, languages. 2 years ago, I even met with Mrs. Gandhi when she was the minister for, I think it was women and children, and she had the idea of actually printing the seven steps on the back of notebooks, which would then be distributed to every child through schools. So they would take that home and have that conversation with their parents. I don't know if that's happened, but it would certainly be a great idea to bring back, because I agree that the educational efforts will have to take part in many different layers of the media, online, offline, radio, television, movies, but even as simple as school books or notebooks that will be carried home, and the parents will go, "What is that on the back of your notebook?" Start to have that conversation.
I think that's a brilliant idea. Simplest way to take the message to the home from the students themselves. So, so I think the outcome of this discussion I can see is definitely the first one is parents. We as parents we have to be absolutely responsible, and that is what I personally believe in, and I have said this in several forums. When I when I started interacting with my kid about the digital world and all of that, I told him three things. That first, I trust you, right? Then you will you will make mistakes, right? But I will scold you, but will stand behind you, right? So I think this is a simple message I have given. I hope he has understood what I've tried to tell him over a period of time. But any last thoughts in terms of and the purpose of this particular interaction that we have formed is not just to come together on screens and discuss and move away, but we need to create an action plan, all of us, whoever has contributed in this conversation, and maybe many more out there are willing to contribute. So maybe a quick sort of action points, maybe in the Indian context, if each panel member can share based on today's conversation, that will be a good outcome. And we will share that with Mr. Maheshwari and his team. And all of us will have that continued engagement with the government and all the stakeholders to take this campaign forward. So if you could quickly give your sum up, takeaways, that would be very, very helpful. Laurie, do you want to start?
Sure. We talk a lot about, I mean, Stephen mentioned there's no silver bullet, but we talk about legislation and education as the key pillars for change. There has to be strong legislative guidelines that make sure that people understand what is legal and illegal behavior. And education is the second part, but that's not just on educators. That's the responsibility of industry, government, educators, parents, and individuals themselves.
Thank you. Dr. Deshpande?
I personally feel that as I was talking about the child safety policy, I would certainly say that some reporting structures have to be developed in each and every school. Some screening systems have to be developed, and some systems to address and support the child who is going through any kind of insecurity. That needs to be parallelly developed in all the schools, and the authority should be given to the school itself.
Amitabh?
I think for parents, number one, please don't indulge in victim blaming if something goes wrong with your child. It is everybody's fault, but not the child's. That is number one. And they are usually very, very scared to share it with you. So as a parent, the first thing that comes even before internet is love and care. So for all Indian parents listening, forget the skill. They will learn English, maths, and internet later. Please convey that you love your child no matter what, and you care for them no matter what. Number two, for the larger part, because Maheshwari sir is there, all these other stakeholders are there, awareness backed with action. For every other stakeholder, it is awareness, 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 backed with action, which can be done, which can be formulated. For parents, your primary task is to love your child, care for them, and let them know this as well. So they shouldn't be scared of you. If something goes wrong, you are there to protect them. The state is there to protect them. Other stakeholders are there. And it is our job to make sure that they have a positive and a safe ride on the internet.
Thanks, thanks. Very, very useful. Amod? Amod, you are on mute, please.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, I second what Amitabh is saying. Basically, awareness is extremely important. And how do you get this awareness? How do you translate awareness? It's basically through leveraging the media that we have around us, be it print, be it electronic, be it radio, be it billboards, whatever it is that we need to do to leverage. And that awareness is basically at both levels, at the parent level and at the child's level. And both these can be leveraged to bring about what is called awareness of what are the do's and don'ts. So it's very important for a child to have simple do's and don'ts and how those can be used effectively to communicate what are these, what are the safety measures, what are the verified sites, how we should be approaching them, and the safety features that have to be put in terms of parental locks, the child locks, the safety, guardrails around it, and that's where the awareness can be brought out. So the media can be leveraged in very many ways by creating campaigns around this.
Thanks, Amod. I'm sure you will take the lead on this as the media house.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Thank you. Stephen, over to you. Your last word on this point.
Simply talk with your kids, not just at them. Use the online safety tools that are there. And if you don't understand them, then search or ask. And be a good digital role model yourself. They will do what you do, not what you tell them to do. And last but not least, let's get the 7 steps on every child's notebook in India. I think that's just the best idea I've ever heard. Let's make it happen.
Thanks a lot. And I really want to thank Fiki to get on board with us on this seminar. Within a week's time, we were able to put this together. So really, thankful for Fiki's support and all the panel members with such a short notice. You have taken out time. Stephen, early morning for you and late night for you, Laurie. I know all of us are quite caught up, and my son is waiting here for me, to close and go back to him. He has come and gone several times. But before I end, I would request Mr. Nishit Desai to say a few words. And Leena, if you are on, would love to have you say a few words as well.
I would only say not few words, I will say only 2 words. Thank you so much, and thank you very much, and thank you. So I think it was wonderful discussion. I've been on the discussion since the word go, and throughout the discussion, a lot of perspectives have come about, and I think let's ponder on this further. Let's take this whole idea forward and get to its logical conclusion. So I think this has been wonderful initiative, and thank you, Vicky, and thank you each one of you, our esteemed guests. I don't want to take time in naming everybody, but thank you.